And we're going to have a little conversation because Shaq has so much knowledge in his head that I'm going to try and tease some of it out.
Or rather, I don't like doing presentations. So that's the truth behind that one.
But you know a lot because you meet a lot of entrepreneurs. You've been working with Horizons Ventures, with Nick Deloisio of Sumley, who sold to Yahoo for about 30 million. What do you look for when you're starting to work with an entrepreneur?
So I guess the fact that I didn't come through the traditional route, right? So I didn't finish high school, I didn't go to college, I didn't go to university. So compared to a lot of my peers who've taken the traditional route and ended up at McKinsey's or BCG and then gone on to work in investment banks, I didn't have any of that. It was always a struggle with my own money, what little I had of it, and at one stage taking out a fake credit card in my mother's name, who's an illiterate 70-year-old lady who'd asked me to read her post and go, son, why is there a £27,000 American Express statement here? I'd go, oh no, they're just trying to sell you some credit cards. And I'd go back to the team and say, we best pay this bill or my mother's gonna go bankrupt. So when you've built startups with that kind of pressure to an extent, you take a very different view. And I commented to one of your colleagues who asked me last week, said, how do you look at risk? I said, well, when you have nothing, you're willing to take huge risks. Because you know what, if you lose it, you never had anything in the first place, right? So that's how, over the years, I've taken most of my risk. If you look at Spotify, that was actually my first investment. Part of me thinks I shouldn't have done another one. That would have been a good one, and just, say that was the one and only one I did. I actually put half of everything I had, half of my net worth, and I didn't necessarily put it into a music streaming company. I put it into a team run by Daniel and Martin Lawrenson, because that belief that they wanted to make change, and I was never smart enough or tactical enough to build a company like that. It was a pretty big goal that Daniel was aiming for at the age of 22 or 23. So the next best thing was, well, hey, I've actually have some money now. I can give you some of this and hopefully help with the fundraising. And secondly, I probably can't tell you what to do because you're way smarter than I am, but I can probably tell you what not to do because I've, got the scars to prove it. So does that answer the question?
It does, but tell us about some of the other companies you've been involved with, and then we can talk about Bitcoin in particular.
So Nick Deloisio was very interesting. Nick was 15 at the time, built Sumley. It was one of my colleagues at Horizons Ventures, which is the investment arm of Mr. Li Ka-shing in Hong Kong, who found him. And I met Nick on a Saturday morning in Soho. We had breakfast, and you realized he was somebody. You had to remove the fact that he was 15 or 16. The IQ and EQ of this individual was unbelievable, and you realized he had that, call it fire in the belly, or this determination that failure was not an option. And ultimately, I've seen this pattern play out many times over, and you're backing individuals, right? So he was one of those individuals who wanted to back, and Nick will go on to do many, many amazing things. I mean, he's only 18 now. He sold a company to Yahoo. He's at Yahoo now. There's going to be many, many more companies coming out of Nick Deloisio's mind in the next 10 or 20 years.
And then you got interested in money.
Bitcoin.
As in challenging the way money is processed through the system at the moment.
So myself and a Swedish colleague of mine, and a very dear friend who actually introduced me to Daniel many years ago, called Jimmy, he had spent about a year looking at every Bitcoin company, gone through about 45 of them, and he called me up one day and he said, I've got this company, there are a couple of guys in, I believe, Florida, who want to build out a payments company for the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think we should talk to him. We talked to him, and we ended up making an investment. We led the round. It was a seed round of a few $100,000, and this was around October, November 2012. So made the investment. The coin price was anywhere between $10 and $25, up and down. And they hired a few people and started getting some traction with some companies. And then you saw in around March, end of March 2013, the price going to hit $260. At that stage, I started getting a lot of inbound emails from various VCs and entrepreneurs going, hey, should I buy some Bitcoin? Who is this company called Mt. Gox? And I realized they were contacting me not necessarily because I was the smartest person that they knew, but in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And at least I'd been talking about it and looking at it a bit. And that's what really got me excited, that there was a different wave of people who wouldn't publicly be talking about Bitcoin, but somebody from Morgan Stanley's investment department contacted me, not because I had a relationship with them, because some of their high net worth individuals were calling, as you would do when you buy stocks and shares. You'd call your private wealth management guys going and calling them up going, hey, I'd like to buy $1 million of Bitcoin. And you've got Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan calling me up going, what can you tell us about Bitcoin? Because we have zero idea about this.
So what can you say about the company you invested in?
So BitPay's gone on to do 2 funding rounds. Peter Thiel and Founders Fund came in early last year, and it just closed a funding round about 2 months ago, led by Index Ventures. The team's growing. They're based out of Atlanta now, and they've got many e-commerce sites signed up.
And it lets you pay using your Bitcoin account.
I look at them not as a Bitcoin company, I look at it as a digital payments company. So they remove the friction. So just the way if you're an e-commerce merchant, you need to have some sort of relationship with the payment provider, this does all your currencies, or all your digital currencies.
But for big mainstream venture capital organizations like Index or Founders Funds, Bitcoin must be a fairly high-risk investment. There's questions about future regulation. There's a question about what is the market value of a Bitcoin. What do you think led fairly established investors to take Bitcoin seriously at that stage?
Well, I think we're seeing a gradual maturity taking place. If you look at 18 months ago, 2 years ago, the conversation on Bitcoin was very much Silk Road, and you can buy a pizza with it from someplace for 1,000 Bitcoins, which is going to cost you millions of dollars now. There's various waves that come in any industry. There'll be people who just are obsessed by it, have got zero business skills, have really no idea what they want to do. They have an idea which they want to deploy. Then you get some opportunities that come along who think that they can take this to the next step of the journey. I think we're at step 3 or step 4 of probably 100 steps. And if you do look at venture and VCs as a whole, ultimately they're investing in risk. I know over the years, at times it seems like what they're trying to do is not invest in risk, but they have to take some risk. And if you look at Mark Andreessen and Andreessen Horowitz, they've made some big bets, especially in Coinbase. You've got Fred Wilson, who's invested in a company. You've got Redpoint, who just invested in a company called BitGo. It's a sector everyone knows is going to get disrupted, and you don't need to smash it out of the park at this stage. You need to be part of that journey, and you learn along that journey. And I think companies like BitPay are very, very early. Overstock.com and Tiger Direct and a bunch of e-commerce, specialist e-commerce companies have started accepting Bitcoin. It hasn't reached Amazon yet. Right? And Amazon have got their own plans in regards to virtual currency. They've been working on something called Amazon Coin. But it's so early. And as Mark Andreessen says, you got to look at Bitcoin as similar to the internet in 1995 or email in 1995. Somebody says, oh, well, the fax machine's never going to get disrupted, or X isn't going to get disrupted. We've seen this over and over and over. And if you have a passion and appetite for risk, like I do, why wouldn't I do it? I don't want to turn back in 5 years' time going, I was there when this happened and I didn't, participate in it. It's a fun ride.
Let's assume that a cryptocurrency becomes widely accepted and maybe gets regulated as an official currency. What's to say of all the many attempts to create a cryptocurrency? Bitcoin is going to be the one that wins. I mean, there was Netscape Navigator in '95, but nobody uses that now.
So I couldn't tell you what's going to win. And personally, I don't really care what's going to win. Something's going to win. Right? And Bitcoin may be step 1 or step 2. There's a lot of alternative coins, Dogecoin and Litecoin, et cetera, which personally I'm not spending too much time on. But at least Bitcoin has managed to outlast most things that have come in the past. There was a currency, I think, in the early 2000s called Beans. Remember that? So, it's just iterations of that. And I have zero idea whether Bitcoin is the one, but it's taken it further than anyone has so far. And does it really matter whether it's Bitcoin or something else? At least we know there is a problem, and there are very intelligent people trying to fix this.
But you're putting hard government-backed currency into Bitcoin.
But hard government-backed currency where I'm guessing there are laser printers running at full speed, devaluing that quicker than the paper can be delivered. That's the hard real currency you're referring to, right?
It's quite a volatile currency. You know, suddenly China says, right, we're going to keep an eye on this, and the market price tumbles.
Yeah.
Why should we trust a currency that's so volatile?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that, unfortunately. But nobody's asking the average consumer to participate in this, right? And you know, it's the same as stocks. And you know, there's this question: is it currency? Is it a store of value? You know, that there isn't that much penetration. I mean, yeah, we're in the tech world and we hear about it. I'm guessing if you go out on the street, if you stand in, I guess, the East London branch of Barclays and talk to the average bank consumer about Bitcoin, they have zero idea about it yet. So small movements, and you know, by an individual or an institution buying some coins or selling some coins, of course, it's going to have a huge impact on the price. But you know, it's not something I would say for the faint-hearted. And just like stock trading, you know, if you look at whenever there's a bubble, you often meet people who's like, so what are you doing? Yeah, I've given up my job, I'm stock trading. And you know, they're making 3% gains in a day and 7% gain the next day and 25% losses the day after. You know, it just isn't for the faint-hearted. But you know, there's a currency part of it, but there's the fact that there's a problem, right? And I think Sebastian's mentioned it very well, and the gentleman before him mentioned it very well. There is a fundamental problem with payments. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, we can do everything. I can sit here and send you a voice message or a video message. It'll take 2 seconds. Actually, let's take Sebastian from Klarna in Sweden. I could send him an audio message or a video message. It'll take about 3 seconds. But if I need to send him, you know, 200 kronas for those red Swedish trousers that he likes wearing, and I want a pair to walk around in London, it's going to cost me, I don't know, $32. It may take 4 days for the payment to arrive. Why is that in 2014? It just makes zero sense. Right? So Bitcoin solves digital currency solves that problem to an extent. I'm dumbing it down very much there.
But then regulators start to say, hang on, we don't like what's happening with cross-border payments that we're not in full control of. Couldn't regulators shut down the value of Bitcoin?
You know, it depends who you talk to in terms of regulation. There are different teams who are positive, there are different teams who are inquisitive. You know, one of the things that comes up a lot, and I've had this conversation many times, is, well, you know, it's being used for drugs, or it's being used for terrorism, or it's being used for money laundering. You know, let's accept the US $100 note is the chosen currency for every criminal in the world. You know, when the CIA dropped bales of cash to Afghanistan, they weren't dropping them out of Air Force One helicopters and sending smartphones down with blockchain apps installed on them. They were sending US dollars, right? So the government's always worried, right? The government's always got some issue, because when you don't understand it, you get fearful of it. Another way I could explain it, I'm sure a lot of people here know, Silk Road, which took place, was shut down by the FBI. I believe there was 174,000 Bitcoins, which were seized. And this was coins by Silk Road users who deposited, and they were given an opportunity whether they wanted to claim back, and I don't think anyone did. The first auction basically ended yesterday, and I think it's 30,000 coins that was sold by the United States Marshal Service. And there were over 60 bids and over 45 registered bidders. And the current price at the moment of Bitcoin is about $650. And it seems like, yeah, $650 per coin. And from the information I'm getting back is people bid more than $650 and they still didn't get the coins. The first thing which I would love for somebody to answer to me, I don't recall the United States government's selling cocaine that they've seized from raids. So you can't say this coin or currency or whatever is illegal. It shouldn't be allowed. I don't see them selling, you know, machine guns in an auction to whoever wants to bid for them, right? At the same time, they're going, hey, well, you know, we're doing a proper auction here. So you're seeing a change. You're seeing a change.
Validation by the US.
Absolutely. But there's a lot of education and there's a lot of processes that have to go through. And I am pro supervision rather than regulation. Every time I use the word regulation, I get all these death threat emails from random people going, "Oh, you work for the government and CoinDesk is run by the CIA." So I try and not use that.
So tell us about your other business. You set up CoinDesk.
So CoinDesk, yeah.
What
CoinDesk,
does it do?
I was actually at Hong Kong airport during this period that this price went up to 260. And so I start then trying to look on Google News, trying to find some sources. And I'm either seeing really tabloid news about Bitcoin or I am seeing really technical analysis, which I didn't understand. So I came back and said to my team, hey, we should just hire a journalist and put up one article a day on Bitcoin. And we did that 4 weeks after I came up with the idea. And here we are 15 months later. There's a team of 6 full-time people based in London, 9 freelancers. I would like to think we're the largest digital currency information, news and price website in the world. We're quoted by Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones on a daily basis. So it was just one of those random ideas which has grown into its own business, and I have very little time to actually run it because of everything else I do, but there's a great team there, and we're getting hundreds of thousands of visitors every month, participating in a community which we've created. So let's see where it ends up. But what is interesting is the information over the last 12 months, it's been less of the Silk Road and more of the Visa are now setting up an innovation unit looking into the effects of Bitcoin. Western Union have made a statement, or John Donahoe from eBay is saying, yeah, he can see a time where eBay will accept Bitcoin. So the conversation's changing, right? So the conversation's changing. It's getting easier for people to buy Bitcoins. It's getting easier for people to store. And I'll be fascinated, when we sit here and digital currency is something which we just accept as something completely normal.
So last question, Shakil. There's a lot of people here from the big banks, from the payment services companies, from, let's say, the established order. Leave them with one piece of advice regarding cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. What should they do now?
Just look at any of the other industries which have been disrupted. Change is coming. Trying to fight it and shut it down with regulation is just going to, it'll prolong this little wave that you've got versus embracing. And I'm not saying embracing, going, hey, tomorrow we're shutting down our bank accounts, we're moving straight over, but try and understand why the core technology could help what you're doing. And, let's face it, large organizations who've been around for decades have got an infrastructure, they've got a user base, and they've got customer loyalty in most cases. They're probably the best ones to innovate. And I actually think before the banks do it, the telcos are going to do it. So if you take Kenya and you take M-Pesa, which is, probably the largest payments company in Africa right now, that took a telco to do it, not for an African bank. If an African bank had thought about it, they would have won that battle. But obviously, it's pretty apparent whoever came up with the idea would have gone to the bank and been shut down, going, oh, you can't do this, and we need to control this, allow innovation to happen, and let's let nature take its course.
Please could we thank the Citizen Kane of Bitcoin, Shakil Khan.
Thank you.